Did you know that Lewis Hamilton, without having completed an official race with the new SF26, is already generating concern within Ferrari? But not because of poor performance, but quite the opposite? How fast can a driver be for his own engineers to question whether they built an unbeatable car or simply signed the greatest performance puller in modern history? At most Formula One teams, when a new driver first steps into the simulator for next season's car, what engineers expect is a learning curve. Adjustments, feedback, questions, suggestions. But what happened when Lewis Hamilton first tested the SF26 at Maranello was exactly the opposite of what they anticipated. Instead of facing a stage of progressive adaptation, Hamilton began to set times that, in the subsequent analysis, completely confused those responsible for data correlation. Not because they were good, but because they were too good. The simulator's dynamics engineers, accustomed to evaluating marginal differences between elite drivers, observed that Hamilton's times were not only better than Charles Leclerc's in similar conditions, but consistently outperformed by margins of up to half a second per lap. And we are not talking about a single isolated simulation, but rather a sequence of runs under standardized parameters. Same fuel load, same simulated track temperature, same aerodynamic and suspension configurations. The data, when presented at the week's technical meeting, was received with absolute silence. One of those silences where no one dares to be the first to give their opinion because everyone is interpreting the same thing. If the data is correct, then what they have is not only a competitive car, they have a beast. And that beast, in Hamilton's hands, seems to operate on a different frequency. When we talk about the Ferrari simulator in Maranello, we are not referring to a sophisticated video game or a superficial training tool. This is one of the most advanced systems in modern motorsports. A controlled environment that replicates, with millimeter precision, the dynamic behavior of the car, the interaction with the tires, aerodynamic loads, weight transfers, and even sensitivity to external factors such as side wind. A closed space where errors are eliminated and where each variable is isolated to understand the pure potential of the machine. And it is precisely that purity that makes the simulator a revealing tool, but also dangerous if interpreted out of context. In that digital laboratory, Hamilton not only set impressive times, he did it with a consistency that amazed engineers. There were no abrupt oversteers, no unnecessary steering corrections, no unexpected losses of grip. The lines were clean. Energy management, surgical. The times per sector showed a harmonious progression between braking apexes and accelerations. And all that was even more impressive considering that he was driving a completely new car, based on a philosophy that radically broke with that of his old car. But what does that really tell us? First of all, the SF26 has a very defined character. A car that, unlike its predecessor, rewards anticipation, aggressive entry, and total confidence in the front axle. And that, almost surgically, fits with Hamilton's driving DNA. 4 years at Mercedes, the Briton developed a style based on attacking braking, digging the nose of the car into the apex and leaving with as much traction as possible. That philosophy, when met with a chassis that is finally capable of supporting it without becoming unbalanced, produces a very rare phenomenon in Formula One. The driver does not fight against the car, he merges with it. Leclerc, for his part, is also fast in the simulator. Nobody doubts it. But its style requires another type of balance. A car that allows more rotation in the middle of the curve, that accepts greater sensitivity to the rear axle to favor abrupt changes of direction. The SF25 punished both equally, but the SF26, having been designed to be more neutral and less nervous, tends to reward safety on the front axle. A subtle change in behavior, but decisive at the level of sensations and performance. And that is where the paradox arises. The simulator does not lie, but it does not show the whole truth either. It does not consider the accumulated wear after 20 laps. It does not simulate the mental state of a driver at the end of a stint. It does not reproduce the subtle vibration generated by the slipstream of another car. It is a controlled world, a universe without chaos. That's why Ferrari engineers have been cautious about euphoria. What they saw on screen was an impressive technical demonstration, but without the unpredictable variables of the real world. They know that what really matters will happen under the scorching sun of circuits like Bahrain, between the walls of Monaco, or in the strategic chaos of Suzuka. However, what they have learned cannot be ignored. The SF26 in Hamilton's hands shows a higher performance ceiling than had been projected on paper. And that, in a sport where every technical detail is transformed into a strategic advantage, is a sign that Ferrari could not only be back, but could be ahead. When data is received such as that produced by the SF26 simulator with Hamilton at the wheel, the immediate reaction may be to assume that a gold mine has been discovered. That Ferrari finally has a champion car in its hands. That Hamilton, in just a few digital sessions, has already pulverized any uncertainty. But if there's one thing that high-level engineering has taught throughout the history of Formula One, it's this. Data doesn't lie, but without the right context, it can be deeply misleading. Engineers know this better than anyone. Each figure, each time delta, each load or traction parameter must be read with a double lens, that of mathematical precision and that of operational reality. What a simulator projects as possible does not always translate into what a track allows. Because there is a chasm between the laboratory and the asphalt. And that abyss is full of variables that no system, no matter how advanced, can simulate 100%. One of the most critical factors is the behavior of the tires under real stress. In the simulator, the tires behave according to ideal models based on Pirelli data and laboratory tests. But on the track, that prediction can be altered by a simple gust of wind, a minimal variation in air pressure, or a millimeter correction in direction at the exit of a curve. And that directly impacts race pace. Then there is thermal management. The SF26, according to technical reports, has improved its energy efficiency and thermal stability in long simulations. But it has not yet been subjected to a full race in extreme conditions, such as those experienced at circuits like Singapore, where the buildup of heat can destabilize even the best cars in the championship. Added to this is the human dimension. The psychological pressure of the driver during a qualifying session, quick judgment under the yellow flag, decision-making in the face of an unexpected change in weather. All of this alters performance. In the simulator, Hamilton does not have Verstappen pushing from the rearview mirror, nor a rival strategist anticipating his undercut. On the track, these elements completely change the scenario. But perhaps the most relevant point, and also the most ignored by those who read the data from the outside, is the technical evolution of the car during the season. A simulator evaluates the car in its current state, frozen in a specific iteration of development. In reality, the SF26 is going to evolve. It will receive new aerodynamic packages, power unit modifications, suspension adjustments, and reinterpretations of its overall balance. What works sublimely for Hamilton today may not have the same effect in 10 races, when the load balance has changed and conditions have completely mutated. That is why, within Ferrari, prudence reigns over enthusiasm. There is one certainty. They have made a clear technical leap with respect to the SF25. There is another certainty. Hamilton has achieved an instant connection with the machine that gives them a high-level reference. But there's also a responsibility. Making sure that advantage isn't a mirage generated by an idealized testing environment, but rather the reflection of a project that can survive the inevitable chaos of the season. Engineering doesn't lie. But if you ignore the context, if you forget that Formula One is decided under unpredictable conditions, you run the risk of interpreting the information as a destination, and not as a starting point. What is happening at Ferrari is not just any preseason story. It is not the typical rumor inflated by the press, nor an advertising strategy to create hype. It is a technical indication, a real echo from the nerve center of Maranello, where the figures are pointing to something that could mark the beginning of a new cycle in the Scuderia. But the real question that arises is, are we seeing the beginning of a historic synergy between pilot and machine, or simply the artificial gloss of an idealized simulation? Now it's your turn to reflect. Do you think Hamilton has really managed to adapt as quickly to the Ferrari environment as the data says? Or do you think that Leclerc, once he gets into rhythm with the SF26, will balance the scales? And furthermore, could this duo turn Ferrari into a legitimate threat from the first race on the calendar, or are we facing a digital mirage that still has to face the toughness of the track? Your opinion as a fan or analyst matters, because these types of debates build the story of the season before a single green flag waves. And if you're really interested in unraveling how Ferrari got to this point, what technical decisions, what strategic sacrifices, and what key redesigns enabled this jump in performance, then you have a clear mission. Leave your comment, share your perspective, and stay tuned. Because if this start of the season confirms what the data suggests, we could be witnessing the birth of the most competitive Ferrari of the modern era. And if you want us to elaborate on how the SF26's modular design is allowing Ferrari to explore levels of adaptability that no other team seems to match, and how that's giving Hamilton a never-before-seen advantage, just say so. We will delve into that chapter with the same depth as an engineer in Maranello would. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.